Welcome. This is the panel, Can You Have It All? The age-old question. I'm Briana Vannozzi. I'm going to be your moderator for our great panel this afternoon. I'm the anchor at NJ Spotlight News, which is the news division of NJPBS, formerly NJTV. But we are the public TV station for New Jersey. We cover from Cape May to Sussex County. We have a nightly broadcast every evening with a just phenomenal team of journalists on the digital and broadcast side. And there's probably not a topic or town we haven't covered or touched. So I've been able to come across a lot of great leaders in this position, and 3 of them are sitting right before you. So we will get started. And just a reminder also, if you want to find any of the bios on our panelists, you can find those on the website, or you can use the QR code on the signage around. Just check that out and you can find more about the panelists, not just for this, but for all of them. And also a reminder that you are being recorded. So let's just go through our panel here, and I would love for you each to just take a few seconds to talk a little bit about yourself. So Roseanne, why don't you get us started?
Thank you. And welcome everybody. I'm Rosanna Torres. I'm a divorce attorney, so if you're interested in losing about 200 pounds, I could help you with that. I have a boutique business, like Marjorie Perry calls it. I have two offices. One is in Florham Park in Morris County, and I started my firm in Hunterdon County in Clinton. And my daughter just got married about 10 days ago, and so I'm still floating on cloud 9. So, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Diane Wasser. I'm the partner in charge of New Jersey for Eisner Amper. We're a public accounting and consulting firm, and I head our Metro Park office as well as certain other things around the company. I am happily married for, 33 years, and I have 2 lovely children, Kevin, who's 27, and Caroline, who's 24. It was a pleasure to get ready for this event with these wonderful women, and I hope you all get a little, I call them tidbits, but in the other session I was in, people call them gems, little gems that you get out of these things. Yeah. So hopefully we'll touch you in some way to make your life better.
Whether it's a tidbit, a gem, or a nugget, it hopefully folks find value and the things that we talk about resonate with folks. Good afternoon. I'm Beatrice Romeo. I am the retail market president at TD Bank. I have, and that's obviously responsible for the store locations that serve our communities across the Central and South Jersey market. Have been there for about 19 years, and I too am happily married for some 28 plus years and have a daughter that's 25 years old, and very fortunate to be here with these ladies today.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, you all are just aspirational in so many ways, not just because you're at the top of your career, but as you can tell, we had a lot of fun getting ready for this panel. It's these are not wallflowers here. But just for myself as well, being a new mom, juggling the responsibilities of being in a leadership position in a very male-dominated field, you all gave me a lot of nuggets and gems, so we will definitely relay those.
No, tidbits.
Tidbits. We'll come up with something else by the end of this. So I thought it would be great just to start for each of you to touch on what having it all means for you, because it looks different for everyone, and I hope that that's what we get out of this, that it's not clear black and white on paper what having it all means. It's what fits for your life. So I would love for each of you, because you have gone through many seasons of life and ups and downs and accomplished so much, to talk about what that looks like for you. Roseanne.
It looks like, for me, integration between my personal and professional life, and sort of like an ebb and flow. I don't think you can have it all at the same time. I think, too, that we still have a lot of asymmetrical roles in our homes. All of you ladies that are sitting in this room, and perhaps the men too, our work does not get left behind when we leave the office. It's coming home with us. social media has elevated our expectations about what life is supposed to look like, including marriage. And so there's a lot of pressure, I think, to perform in all facets of your life. And I think for me, it's about self-care and owning, if you will, or accepting is probably a better word, whatever season of life you're in, and being present in that space during that time.
Diane, tell us what it looks like for you. And Roseanne touched on something I think is really important, which is just this societal impact and the workload balance, the emotional balance that we all carry. What does it look like, or what does it mean for you to have it all?
Thank you. The most basic thing I can say is just happiness. Just being happy and making sure you're surrounding yourself with people and a schedule and a family and a career that you enjoy. I think balance is so personal and different for everyone, and having it all, everybody that hears that, their definition of all is different, and that's okay. And everybody has to find their own piece. As I was going through different phases of my life, I realized, I think when my kids were in grammar school, what could I do to stop feeling so much on a treadmill or so distracted? And one of the things that I had a revelation one day was I can change my schedule and I can reorganize my day to make myself available to be more present at what I was doing. So I changed mostly not how much I slept, but my sleep schedule. And I started to get up at like 4 a.m., a little before 4, and I would work and get ahead of my day. And sometimes not even turn my email on, and just felt like I got to a place where when I got the kids up for school and got them ready to school, I was more present. And I think that really, for me, led to happiness. And it has changed over the years, because then your kids get older and they go to high school and then they start to drive, and you're not getting up at 4 a.m. because you're staying up until they get home, and which isn't 4
So
a.m.
it never ends.
Yes, sorry about that. It never ends, and it's and then it changes now that we're empty nesters, and now I'm thinking about, wow, I'm maybe very within a 5-year window of retiring. What's that going to look like? So it's okay to be less rigid as you go, just to kind of fit what your life and your time commitments are.
So the ebbs and flows, Beatrice, and aside from anyone who cringed at the 4 a.m. wake up to get your work done, how does having it all look for you, and balance and being present is kind of a reoccurring theme here?
Yeah, I think it has to do with perspective, and I agree with both these ladies. Happiness is, I'm not even going to call it balance. I'm going to call my happiness this blend of, being able to do the things that you need to do and the things that you want to do in your work, in your life situation. And yes, it is constantly changing, and you have to be okay with that. Don't look for perfection, because that will be the quickest path to frustration. I almost equate it to riding a bike, right? When you ride a bike on 2 wheels, it could be uneven terrain, the things getting in your way, but as long as you're in constant motion, you're constantly reevaluating and assessing, kind of your course of action. And then there's those moments where you have to plant your feet on the ground and stop and be able to, think about your course of action. Am I still on the right path? Have my needs changed? Is it time for me to kind of get off? Am I still enjoying the journey? And am I doing it for all the right reasons? And it's my time to kind of reset, recharge, take that sip, take that breath before just making that next decision. But, when you can make choices that you're happy with and not look sideways at what other people think about how you live your life and, why you made the choices that you make, then you're kind of, for me, that's a nice blend and balance.
Asking, will I regret this? Will I
Yeah.
look back and think, I should have, which we do, right? I mean, hindsight, there's a reason we say hindsight is 20/20, but there is a lot of pressure. I mean, I can speak for myself. I think one of the reasons I was asked to do this was not just because of my position on TV, but also because of juggling so much. And when I came back from maternity leave from having my first child, I decided to be very public with the fact that I had battled postpartum depression and anxiety. And I needed to shut off my social media and all of these images of everyone, just seemingly thriving in their careers while juggling all of their kids, and their relationships looked perfect. And I thought, gosh, things have typically come really easily for me, and why isn't this? And it was finding my groove and not caring about what that image needed to look like. But how do you do that, Roseanne? Because I know for me, asking for help is really, really hard. Why is it so hard? But we need the help, right?
I'm not a therapist, but I think, the way I see it is I've always thought, and probably I'm just going to assume all of you type A's in the room feel the same way, that being vulnerable and asking for help is a sign of weakness. And I've grown to accept that being vulnerable and asking for help is really courageous. It allows me to stay humble and acknowledge what I don't know. And asking for help is just the first hurdle. It's, who are you asking help from? Where do you find your people? And the way I did that was a lot of networking, dipping my toe in all kinds of environments, meeting a lot of people, being curious about people. And I ended up creating a peer group that we're the best of friends now. There's 9 of us. We get together once a month. And these are the gals that I'm the most vulnerable with, that see every part of me. And they also give me the feedback I need to excel, not just in my professional life, but in my personal life. So that's what it looks like for me to ask for help.
So then, Diane, how do you create a support system? How do you ask for a support system if it's not already there? And how do you go about doing that if you're someone who struggles with it?
I did struggle with that because I never wanted to be the person that always needed a ride for their kid or always this. And I think, pardon me, I put myself in that position. I wasn't in it because I was able to have a flexible work schedule because our company is amazing with flexible schedules and doing this and that. And no matter what time you get your work done, just get it done. So I was able to have certain days where I was always the mom that picked the kids up or drove them here and drove them there. And so, I remember my husband saying, so you do it. I'm like, I know, but I don't want to do it too much, or I don't want to ask too much. And everybody finds their people for the different phases of their life. And I remember when I was so sad leaving my high school friends and going to college, and my mother said, you're going to meet new friends. And then college is over. And then life as we knew it was over. And we'll never have fun again. And my mother said, you don't even know who your best friends in life are yet, because you're going to meet more. You don't even have them all. And my God, she was 100% right. So this support system, you kind of know it when you see it. And once you have it, you can't imagine you're going to even get more. But you do as you go through life. And as I was really going through my thought process for all this, it dawned on me on the Atlantic City Expressway that most of what I had thought about was getting here and getting to where my children are, my career is. And I thought, my God, even wrote down on my notes in green, the only ink I could find, retirement. There's a whole other chapter here. I have more friends probably that I'm going to meet. I hope, right? So it's every chapter has excitement. And I'm actually looking forward to that, but I can't believe we've been talking about this for months, and it dawned on me today, oh my God, there's a whole other chapter that I'm going to go through. And time is my enemy. And now I'm going to have a lot of time. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to have lists for everything my husband and I do in retirement. And it's going to drive him crazy. But it's okay to ask for help. And look where it got all of us.
Yeah, Beatrice.
If I can add to that, because everything they're saying just resonates for me. First and foremost, there is a component of understanding what you need that we forget about, right? We worry about, geez, how am I going to take care of my kids, my family, my friends, meet my commitments? And there's this emotional support system that you have to remember for yourself. And 9 times out of 10, because you don't want to feel vulnerable, you don't ask for. And there's a societal stigma about, if you don't do it all alone, then you know what, you're not capable probably of taking on more challenges or doing other things. You do have to take a look at your network of people. And there's that saying that someone wise in this room once said to me, it takes a village. That spans at work, seeking out mentors. That's your community, that's your neighborhood, that's your network of family and friends. There is and it does change. You talked about peer groups, but it's so important because it starts with you leaning in and wanting to open up the conversation and take the risk to talk openly, as you shared, about certain things. And you'll find that folks are willing to help and be there. And as a matter of fact, they also receive back a gift from, being able to help you as well. And it's fulfilling for them. But it's challenging your ways of thinking, changing the way you approach your thought process about life and work, and trying to be all things to everyone all the time, communicating openly. It's funny, I was going through a time in my life, and I'll share a personal story very quickly, where I was in that grind mode on the trajectory. I thought you had to be accessible 24/7. You had to take your work home with you. It was this never ending, and I was burning out and not even seeing it. And then all of a sudden, life was ripped out from under me. My child's childcare, from one day to the next, because of some other crisis with my caregiver, just wasn't there. And I remember, oh my God, I just have to drop everything now. I have to go home. What am I going to do? I'm on the phone with my husband. We have no solution. I've got to go home. And just in this panic mode. And as I was in the school picking up my child, one of the other mothers, who I knew very well from the neighborhood and the school system, overheard me, and she says, I don't know if you're comfortable with this or not, but I happen to take care of 2 other children. And I was just in such a panic mode. Let me go home. I don't know. I have to have this perfect solution for my child, right? Otherwise, I'm a bad mother. And then I'm not going to be able to work. And this is just going to ruin everything. My boss is just not going to trust me anymore. And I went home and I said, well, wait, hold on a second. First of all, the cost of childcare is crazy. So whatever she charges me is not going to, it's by comparison. I'm not going to have this, the childcare, you have to be picked up by 5 p.m. And how's that going to impact work? And well, she doesn't have a time. She lives 2 blocks away from school and home, and she's more than willing. And my daughter has a social network accessible, and she's a disciplinarian. So I knew homework was getting done. But the point is, you just don't ask for it. You don't bother to engage folks. And so you could miss opportunities to get the help that you need because it is there. You have to overcome that bias, I would say, in your own mind about, being able to ask for help and have a support system.
Gosh, it's so true. I mean, just opening up and letting people know that you're going through some type of struggle, whether it be small or large, those opportunities present themselves because we do often think we need to be the person who finds the solution. And really, A, we can't be, and B, the old saying, 2 minds are greater than one. And that's really how you get the end result, I think, that you're looking for. But you also brought up, Beatrice, being all things to all people all the time. And it's just impossible. It's impossible, even though we try to do it. So I want to talk about boundaries, because I know for me, one of the things that I learned this year and is my favorite thing now is saying no to things. Because I was always a yes person, and I will take on that extra project, and I will totally plan that family event, and I will do all of it because I can, and then burning out. And so now I love saying no. It feels so empowering and so good. And I feel like I'm prioritizing the things that I want to prioritize. So let's talk about boundaries, because Roseanne, I can see you and I know you have some gems in there.
Well, my life is not my own at work because I'm a litigation attorney. And when I walk in the door, sometimes I don't know what's going to happen that day. I could the best laid plans are out the window if somebody files some application with the court. So, but the way I work with boundaries is I've done a couple things over the years, because I could get sucked into email the minute I wake up, because, the phone is right by my head. And the day can just get away from you so quickly. It's difficult to stay on task. I have like the shiny object syndrome. There's too many tabs open in my brain. I'm always like going from one thing to another. And, all the studies show that that's just a horrible way to work. And so what I've done, I'm a very pragmatic person. So I always want to know the solution. Like, just tell me what I should do. And I can implement that. I'm a quick study. So what I do is I don't schedule any client consultations in the morning from 9 to 12, unless it's like an emergency, because that's what I call my deep work time. That's when I work on myself, I work on my business, and I work in my files, because, in litigation, there's always a lot of stuff going on. Mentor my team. I also have autoresponders on my email. I honor this more in the breach than actually doing it. But in any event, if you emailed me right now, you would get a message that said, I don't check email except twice a day. That's a lie. But I'm telling you, for the public, they think I only check my email twice a day. But so that helps me, because it sets expectations with people, that they're not going to send me an email and in 20 minutes they call me because they didn't get a response. I also do that with my team. Please don't email me from across the hallway. Come in or holler. We can have a conversation. The other thing that I've learned to do with my peer group, actually, this is how it started, and it was based on us going to a goal-setting retreat called The One Thing. It was a book written by Gary Keller. You should all read it. It's fantastic. But basically, when you set out whatever it is you're going to do that day, whether it's personal, professional, for me, if it's got to be like a hell yes, or it's just no. Because otherwise, I'm just sort of swimming aimlessly through life. If I want to get where I want to go, I have to really be careful about what I say yes to, what I spend my time doing. And at my age, time is the best, is the most valuable commodity that I think it's probably true for all people at whatever age you are, but time is really much more valuable, I think, as we get older. And so I'm very careful about what I spend my time doing.
So many good tidbits there. So many. And boundaries look different for all of us. And also, not everyone has the luxury of being able to set their own schedule or let people know, hey, I'm only checking email twice a day, or what have you, right? I mean, all of our work lives and personal lives look so different, and we have to be really cognizant of that. So, Beatrice, I'm going to come to you next. How do you set those boundaries when maybe life is a little more rigid?
So it's interesting. Life has more and more demands today than it ever did. I think what you have to think about with boundaries and not having necessarily a flexible schedule, or if, your time isn't your own, to your point, you have to know thyself, meaning when are you at your best, right? So that way you can adjust for it. And always be mindful of the fact that you set an example, whether you want to or not, whether you think you don't, you set an example for someone else. If you're in this constant frustrated, can't get out from under, other people think, well, this is the way it's done. And so I really don't want to go in that direction either. But first and foremost, you have to know when you are at your best self. For in my case, morning person. If you want to get me at my best, call me in the morning, unlike Roseanne, and I'm sharp. If you call me at 7:00 at night, you're going to have to repeat the question twice over. But your priorities need to be clear. And I think that one of the mistakes we make is we confuse what are my priorities on any given day, not to be confused with a to-do list, right? A to-do list, you can always kind of shift, you can delegate, you can kind of put off. Your priorities are those things that you've decided you can't compromise on, because if you do, there will be consequences that you will then regret or not, forgive yourself for. And so when you think about these priorities, both work and personal on any given day, you've got to have a plan. The what if, then what, right? If I don't put these things into place, if I don't stay on schedule, if I don't have someone to help me stay accountable to them, then you know what? The things I want to do are never going to happen. And that's when the anxiety and the frustration set in. And then you have to be very clear on communicating. It's interesting. There are times where my assistant will walk in the door and she's like, it's 4:00. If you don't get out of here and done by 4:00, you are not going to get to your next destination on time. And so you really have to be very clear. And you have to find different ways of working as well. I have a colleague who our schedules clash, or our ways of work, I'll say, not our schedules. She goes through her day and does a million things all at once, and then decides to do this information dump, so to speak. And a 5-minute, I need you for 5 minutes, turns into an hour and a half at like 7:00 at night. Now, again, similar to Roseanne, if it's a crisis, I am accessible, I am there, I'm present, but it's creating that awareness and finding other ways of being able to communicate and do that work, and just being comfortable saying no. One last thing, it's the funniest thing I have to share. Life has a lot of demands. And if you think that winning the lottery is going to be your answer, think again, because it doesn't necessarily make you happy. It might make some things easier, more fun, but not necessarily happier. I was on a panel with a CEO of a company, and she was this very animated speaker, and she was talking about, having to go on planes and meetings and travel and this and her work ethic. And she said, but everybody knows that at Thursday at 4:00, every Thursday at 4:00 is off limits, because that's when she gets her hair done. And so she set that expectation. And so if someone needed her, she was highly accessible, except Thursdays at 4:00.
It's a good point, Diane. Okay, so you need clarity around yourself and your life. What beyond that, though, can you offer to folks who maybe are not great at setting boundaries or just want some parameters to work with?
It is a very blurry line sometimes. And when I was at my most pulled in many, many directions and desperately trying to make sure I was in a good place, I would say to myself, do what you're doing when you're doing it. Like, it seems so silly, but I'd have to catch myself, like, do what you're doing when you're doing it, because that way you're present when you're doing it, and you don't feel as distracted. And then you don't feel bad if you bring your kids to the playground, or you're out with your husband for dinner, or your partner, or your parents, and you're thinking of something else. So it's possible to do that. And I'm big on balance. And back when I was younger, people used to ask me to do work-life balance panels and things like that. And I just always called it life, because it's part of who you are when you're kind of at our point in our career, that it's bringing your whole self somewhere, because your career is part of who you are. And when I was deciding if I could have a family, how could I do that? Somebody said to me, you give 110% to your job every day, you're going to double that to your children and your family. It's part of who you are. And she couldn't have been more right, because in thinking like that enabled me to bring my whole self to what it was I was doing. Of course, it was hard sometimes. Of course, my husband saw me in utter tears, and my friends, because balance isn't, day by day or hour by hour, it's over time. And you just have to, we said it before, find your place and think, will I regret this? And sometimes you have to say no. I've said no to things at work. I remember years and years ago, one of my mentors and one of the founding partners in the firm said, do you see yourself as a mom or and he was going to say partner. And I go, mom. And he goes, really? And I'm like, how do you even ask me that question? It's like, and he, like about a year later said, you are so grounded. I was like, well, I'm bringing my full self. I don't turn things on and off. Like, you get who you get when you get Diane. at work, on the playground, at home, in retirement. Don't forget about retirement.
You know, one of the things I always keep in mind is how you do one thing is how you do everything. And that's really tough, though, a lot of times when you are being pulled in so many directions. And whether you have kids or not, women do often take on a caregiver role in some facet of their family. So how do you go about that? Because life is so much more than our jobs, even though we pride ourselves in our careers. And for a lot of us, it does define us because it's, you know, really important for us and what we do. But how do you then go about it when just the societal impressions, I think we've said already, put more on our plate? They just do. I mean, there's been some cultural shifts, but it's really hasn't changed that much. Roseanne?
Well, my mom is going to be 95 in about 6 weeks. Ooh. Yes, and she lived, thank you. Her name is Rosie, by the way. She's shrinking. She's now shorter than me, which is saying something. She lived with me for 7 years, and then she was bored. She told me, I want to go live over in that senior center. I was like, really? Good. So anyway, I took care of her for 7 years, and if you knew me, that was a feat because I left I'm one of 7 children in an Italian family, and the emotion of choice was, you know, loud anger. So I couldn't wait to get away from these people. They were crazy making cuckoos. And so when I was never really, I love my mother, of course, but I was never particularly close to her. And so it was very ironic to me that I ended up being her caregiver. But I did what I had to do. I felt like it was my duty. But if you knew me day to day, you know, I actually had to cook dinner every night. I mean, I hate to cook. And you know, but we do what we have to do. And like Briana said, the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. So I showed up just like I did at work, and I showed up for my mother the way I would show up for a friend or anybody else, and that's kind of how that went down. And I'm glad that she's in her senior center because she was bored, and now she has plenty of friends, and she plays cards all day, and it's wonderful.
Maybe she'll be my friend.
Yeah, retirement. Well, if you play mahjong, she is an expert, and she loves to play, you know, poker for money. No kidding.
I have just a couple more I want to get to before we open it up to questions. But I think you bring up a good point, though, Roseanne, which is transitions in our life and going through big transitions. So how do you maintain all of these things, this clarity, sense of self, priorities, balance, when you are going through transitions? Is there a recipe for that? Or do you have to kind of take a step back from something in order to get there? Diane?
Oh, I thought that was Beatrice.
Well, we can go to Beatrice first.
It's interesting that you asked that because I am actually, back to retirement, thinking about, not for myself, but for our firm, as partners retire and move on to their next chapter. I think we could do a lot more to make that experience better. And throughout that, I've been interviewing retirement coaches. And it's really about transitioning. So they don't only do retirement, some of them do, but the topics are all similar. And I've interviewed about 6 of them. And what they say about retirement particularly is the things that you love to do in your career are the things the type of things you're going to like in retirement. So it's good to kind of figure out how you're going to fill your space and think about the things that you like, what jacks you up most about your career and your job, and what can you do to get that same fulfillment and energy in retirement. And a lot of them talk about transition in any way, but I think it starts with acknowledging something's going to be different, and that's okay. and figuring out how, here I go again, you can bring your best self to that situation. And we've all transitioned jobs, but maybe they're in the same company, or maybe we've really had a career change. And you keep your eye on the prize and figure out how you're going to live in that new box and be happy. I think is a really important thing. It's almost like acknowledging the transition is gets you halfway there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Beatrice, I mean, life isn't linear in the sense that we're going to have ups and downs. Our career is going to have peaks at times, some setbacks. So what's your advice there?
I think you have to reconnect to why you do what you do for so long, what kept you going. And to Diane's point, I actually did experience quite a significant setback in my life at one point in time. And I was just on this roller coaster ride. My personal life was imploding. My work life was about to implode. And it all came to a screeching collapse. And it was the best thing that happened to me. And if you had asked me then, I wouldn't have ever agreed with you. But it really allowed me to kind of reflect and reset and look and examine at the reasons why I worked so hard, or, I convinced myself, look, we all have this primal need to earn a living, to make more money. There's things that we want, but what was I really connected to? And so being able to call on that support group and reevaluate and realize that the reasons that I was doing things, that, working the way I was before my life imploded, were the right reasons. But I put my life in the hands of the organization or the people I was reporting to, and I lost myself in that process. And so when I was able to connect back to, well, what is it that I enjoy doing? Why am I really doing it? What can I truly be happy with? I wanted to, ultimately it was about this desire to be the best person present. And what I was doing before, sure, I was making money. Sure, I was, growing in my career, but I wasn't the person that I knew I was at my core. When I got home, I was short. And so that step back allowed me to reset, did transition to a new job, transitioned at a lower level, and now I'm, have taken leaps forward again, and I'm happier than ever because I know what the warning signs are, not to lose sight of what's important to you and why I wake up in the morning. And the minute those values no longer align to whether it's the organizational direction or what I'm being asked to do, then it's time for me to kind of reevaluate my choices.
Yeah, well said. I agree. I think a lot of times setbacks can really reset us to become a better version of our old self. And I'm going to have Rosanna and Diane make a last couple of comments about that before we take questions. But I agree wholeheartedly. About a decade ago, I was in a terrible car accident. I had a traumatic brain injury. I was sidelined from life for 2 years. I thought I'm never going to get back to work, to TV, to being a journalist. And then I remember thinking to myself, what does it even matter if I don't have my health? And I saw the people who came around me, and what really mattered was my family and the impact that they had had on my life, and vice versa. And that actually energized me then to get into health and medical reporting and sort of carve a niche for myself that I probably wouldn't have, which then propelled my career. And not that I would ever go through that again, but it did allow me to reset myself and what was the most important for me. So sometimes we see setbacks as a negative, and really they sort of steer us onto the path that we should be on or needed to be on but didn't know. Roseanne?
I think all past is prologue and fodder for your future. So I never look at life like this was a wasted experience. I have a strong faith also, so that always keeps me grounded. And I always think I'm going to land on my feet. I think, too, this is just sort of an innate mindset that I have and instills in me this sort of grit to keep going. 2008, I lost 40% of my income, and I was actually working 3 jobs. I was working for another attorney. I was a municipal prosecutor, for God's sake, and trying to make a living amidst the economic crisis of the time. And I never thought for one second I was, going to just give in or give up. I just kept going, and because that's what my value system was, and so and here I am. So
Grit, guts, and resilience. I think we can all agree. Any last thoughts before we open it up for questions?
I just wanted to, if you don't mind, I think too, when we were talking about vulnerability, that's what people remember about you. You probably forget I'm a divorce attorney, or Diane works for a big accounting firm, or Beatrice works for a bank, but you're going to remember the personal stuff. And when you're vulnerable with people, that's what builds that relationship. And that relationship is what's going to propel your professional life.
Agreed.
I couldn't agree more. I think of humility. I think that makes us better leaders when you can be empathetic and a little bit of emotional intelligence, and really just I talked before about bringing my whole self, and we've all had setbacks, and I had a setback that I thought I didn't see it coming from anywhere, and I thought, okay, how am I going to handle this, and how do I want to see myself when this is done? And the terminology that I stuck with was fail gracefully. Mm-hmm. Like, own it and move on. I always told the kids when they were little, control your circumstances. Mm-hmm. And I remember my son had a good 6 years in college, and I said, control and he goes, circumstances. I said, how's that going? Not very well, but he made it. But literally when he was 2, I'd say, control and he was like, circumstances. Like, it's just, so I thought, okay, I'm 30 years older than when I taught him that, 40 years older. I have to do that. So I have to feel this pain and figure out how I'm going to move on and get back in control of my circumstances.
So I'm going to be very quick. Something that you all shared, spending time and investing time, 2 different things, right? Mm-hmm. So choose wisely. Practice, prioritize self-care, but more importantly, give yourself some grace. Yeah. The world has changed. Yes, there are biases and societal expectations and norms and high demands. Give yourself some grace, because if you don't, who will?
That's so true.
All right, we're just going to end it there.
Well said.
All right, does anyone have any questions? We have a microphone set up, but we can probably hear you if you stand. I lied. Go to the microphone if you have a question. Yes. It's right behind you.
Pay attention to the audio.
Great discussion. Thank you so much. So a lot of us have balanced or blended, have done what we needed to do. My question is more in the line of, we already have so much on our plates, but are there additional skill sets or things that you would advise for us to work on that would further improve this balancing or blending act?
It's a great question.
What I did, because I've always been accused of being sort of fast forward and hot-headed a little bit, which is sometimes not so good in my line of work, but I learned how to meditate. And it has made all the difference in my life, because it just calmed my nervous system down. I highly recommend some sort of self-care that you do for yourself. And I do meditation every day, twice a day.
Diane or Beatrice?
I kind of never know what my day is going to bring, so I try to start my day in as grounded a way as I can. So I get ready every day. And it's not like my husband be like, what are you doing in there so long? It's not that I'm getting ready. I'm getting myself ready for the day. So I take care of myself. And even during the pandemic, I got up every day. I did my hair. I wore my Lulus, but everything else was, that made me feel good. And it wasn't about what I was doing. it was just about the time that I was spending on myself, thinking about other things, writing a list. So that's kind of my self-care is my morning routine and focusing on myself and doing like thinking about me and my day kind of gives me that little boost for the rest of the day that helps me be ready for anything that comes my way.
I don't even know where to begin with this one. Quite honestly, it's not an easy answer, but there's so many things you can do. I think it starts with knowing yourself. Whether you meditate, you listen to audiobooks, you use travel time differently, right? Some of us have some pretty long commutes. Are you starting off your day already doing work, or are you doing something to kind of set the tone mentally and emotionally for yourself? Are there personal and work aspects that you can integrate? I have a friend who's a business owner and has 2 kids under 4. And so, one of the things she valued was going to the gym. Well, with 2 kids under 4 and having your own business, she couldn't get to the gym anymore, but she found a way to integrate playtime where it is quality time, but she's doing her exercise at home. They're building good habits without even knowing it. I mean, I share that because that's something truly personal, that you have to take a look at what's getting in the way, understand again, what's important for you, and don't underestimate the value of a block of 15 minutes is what I will say. Because sometimes you just need to walk away. It's that simple.
Anyone else with any questions? I'm sure there must be something. Yes.
So there was some discussion too.
Thank you. You're a good sport.
There was some discussion about saying no and making boundaries, but I guess what is the best way to say no? Right? Because
No. You know what women do? No, because blah, 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 blah. No, I can't because I'm sorry because, yeah. Or we say, we like to say I just want to know.
Yeah.
It's like minimizes us.
I don't have that issue. My husband has that issue. Every time a friend asks us to do something we really don't want to do, he's like, well, no. And he makes up an excuse. No, just say no.
Right.
It's that simple for me. It depends on, what you're saying no to. Sometimes it does require a conversation. If it's work and your boss wants you to do an extra assignment, you have to say no. And yes, there might be a need to explain. I've got 5 other projects. They might not even be aware. So sometimes it does involve making other folks aware of how full your plate is and being the one to recommend giving someone else an opportunity. If it's your personal situation and your homebody and your friends are the party animals, no is the simple answer.
And setting, you know what you want to say no to because you're setting your priorities, right?
And also, maybe offering, not apologizing, but saying no and saying, but how about there's another alternative to get where you need to be? And I'm happy to help set that up for you so that you're kind of removing yourself from it, but you're also giving an idea to move it in a different direction.
I don't want to speculate, but I feel like the premise of your question may also be about missing out on opportunities if you say no, or whether or not you can advance yourself in whatever area of life by saying no. Is that part of it?
that's one aspect.
That's a no, not now.
Yeah.
And state your reasons. However, it doesn't mean that there won't be a right time or a right fit for you. It's interesting. I can speak to, at one point in my career, I had been in the job for probably longer than I should have been, but I was happy. I felt fulfilled. It worked for my life with, the circumstances at the time. And I had this one individual who kept saying, you don't want to stagnate. It's time for you to move on. And I didn't know whether to feel good or how to feel about that. But the reality was it was an opportunity that presented itself. And I said no. And it wasn't, but it generated great dialogue. It was a no, not now. not now because I want to bring my best self to the work that you're asking me to do, to the opportunity. You know, it required some ramp up and it doesn't fit right now. But it doesn't mean that 2 years from now or a year from now, that doesn't look different. So happy to stay connected or in some other way to that opportunity.
Roseanne.
Well, I wanted to say that in my line of work, people are always asking me to solve their problem. So it can be very heady because I think, you know, I have all the answers. Because you're always asking me to solve your problem. How do I get out of this marriage? How am I going to live? What's going to happen with my kids? And I fall prey to that because of my, you know, because ego. And that translates into sort of people pleasing and being unable to say no sometimes because I say yes all the time to your question of how can I help? How can you help me? And so I had to scratch the surface of that. So I'm here I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm a big proponent of therapy. A lot of therapy to realize Rosie D is a people pleaser. I don't like saying that because I feel it makes me feel weak and I don't want to seem weak, but I am. I'm a people pleaser. I want people to like me. So when I scratch the surface of why I don't say no, that's what I ended up with.
Thank you all for the valuable feedback.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thanks for sharing. Knowing that, you know, we all go through different seasons, and you guys talked about that in your career, going through all these different seasons. And Diane, it seems like you're getting towards the retirement season.
She's mentioned it like 14
I
times.
should have brought my flask.
You just call me old.
She's my mentor. I can say these things. But knowing that you're in these different seasons, and someone asked this in a different session, I loved it. What would you tell your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Great question.
Everything's going to be okay. That's what I would tell my younger self.
You will do the right thing at the right time for yourself and those in your circle that you love.
Control your circumstances.
Give yourself grace.
That was great.
That's great. That's perfect.
Any other questions? That was a good one. Thank you for asking that. I thought I saw a couple of hands in the back earlier, but maybe we covered it. And if not, we're all up here for any one-on-one questions because this panel is just, I have to give you an extra round of applause. You guys are just so wonderful.
Thank you.
And if I can just say one thing, which is to take advantage of that, which I think maybe answers one of the other questions, which is finding mentors, which is not something that was easy for me because I didn't like to ask or make it seem like I didn't know what I was doing. But finding mentors has probably been the best thing I could do for myself in my personal life and my professional life to feel like it's all there because you don't have all the answers and chances are someone has walked your walk or a path similar to it and can offer you some advice. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much.
Thank
everyone.
you all. Thank you.